Hi everyone, welcome back to another true crime video. Today's case, girl, you already know it's a wild one. I did a poll on Instagram and literally everybody but one or two people said they wanted an abduction story. I do put polls on Instagram or like ask questions on there every now and then, so if you're not following me on Instagram, baby, what are you doing? You missing out on stuff. You missing out on updates, on videos possibly getting pushed back or whatever. Like, you're missing out, girl. You're missing out. And I'm funny, so go follow. And if you're not subscribed, what are you doing? Hello, what's the reason? Let me know. What's the reason? Do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And when you subscribe, make sure you hit that bell notification so that you can know when I upload, because girl, it could be at any given time. And if you want to catch the tea with me, you need to hit that B-E-L-L. What the hell? Okay, I'm done. Like, comment, subscribe, bell notification. Let's go ahead and get right into this video. Here we go, another true crime case. I've seen the story covered a few times, but they never really go into as much depth as they should. And just for you to get an understanding of what the true nature of this case was, I will be going into depth. So this may be like a pretty lengthy video. The research that I had to do on this case, oh my god. So for today, I say it every week, this story is wild, but I mean it this time. This is one of the most insane things that I've ever read. Like, it almost sounds like a movie, but it actually happened. That's the wild part. It's not a movie. This shit happened for real. Because of the nature of this case, your girl needs a drink. And honestly, you might need one too. I'm gonna give a disclaimer. This video does involve incest. So if that makes you uncomfortable, this is not the video for you. All of the products I'm using on my face are gonna be listed down below in the description box. So without further ado, let's go ahead and just get into it. Joseph Fritzl was born on April 9th of 1935. So Aries, this your L. Pisces, I'm letting y'all breathe. I took my foot off y'all necks this week. But Aries, this one is yours. He was born in Amstetter, Lower Austria, and he was born during the Nazi Germany occupation of Austria. And he had siblings, but I'm not quite sure the exact number of siblings that he had, but I do know that he had more than one sister. That's about all I know. So when Joseph was 4 years old, his father abandoned the family, and karma came and got that ass because he ended up getting drafted into World War II, and he died in 1944 in combat. Because his father abandoned the family, his mother was then forced to raise the children. And she wasn't very nice. She wasn't very nice. She would subject Joseph to severe beatings, and it was on like a very regular basis. And it ended up turning him into a very, very strict and disciplined person. In 1956, when Joseph was 21 years old, he married 17-year-old Rosemary. And the couple would go on to have 7 children together. He ended up graduating from a technical college with a degree in electrical engineering, and he got a job at I can't pronounce the name, but he ended up getting a job at an Austrian steel company. So, you know, sis was making money. In addition to working at the steel company, he also tried to break into the mail order lingerie business, but he gave up after a few years and just decided to start investing in real estate. So he bought like a lakefront property and like another, I don't want to say like an apartment building because it was very small, but it was something like an apartment. Well, he basically turned it into an apartment building and he rented it out to some people. Also, the home that the family lived in was also like a pretty big space. So they ended up turning that into some apartments as well. And he would rent out some of the places to just like whoever was in need. In 1967, it is alleged that he sexually assaulted a woman at knife point. Her husband was gone for work for the night and he broke into her house, and I mean, you know what happened next. And the woman ended up, well, I'm not gonna say alleged because he did get charged with it. He was charged with the sexual assault. I'm not sure. I think he spent like a year, maybe like a year, anywhere from a year to 18 months in prison. Due to the laws in Austria, it was expunged off of his record after 15 years. Austria got some weird laws, and I hope that by now that has changed, because if only that were not on his record, child. He was also accused of, girl, I don't even want to say accused because we already know from the beginning of this story that this man is nasty. But he was also accused of indecent exposure, and he was also said to have sexually assaulted one of his sisters, which is why I say he probably had more than one sister. To this day, he still remains a suspect in an ongoing murder case. It was in the area of where he lived, and because he was just so nasty and everybody knew, they just assumed that it's him, but they're still trying to figure out a way to prove that it was actually him. And despite all of Joseph's nastiness, his wife Rosemary did not leave, because when he met her, she was a kitchen worker. So she was a kitchen worker and she married an electrical engineer. She wasn't leaving. And it was said that Joseph was very strict and domineering over his entire family. And it was to the point where he could basically clearly do whatever he wanted. He would also take frequent trips to the red light districts in Thailand, and he would be like gone for like days at a time and then just come back like he wasn't engaging in all types of just nastiness. Despite all the poontang this man was getting in Thailand, this still wasn't enough for him, because when one of his daughters, Elizabeth, turned 11, he began sexually assaulting her. Elizabeth Fritzl was born on April 6th, 1966, and she absolutely hated her living environment. She hated it. From the time she was 11 years old, her father was like sexually abusing her, and she was tired. She got so tired to the point where she started running away. Unfortunately, every time she would run away, her parents would file a missing persons report, and the police would come and get that ass and take her back to the house. And once, when she was 16, she actually ran away, and she got as far as Vienna. And again, the police packed up and sent her right back to Amsterdam, back to be with her parents, because, you know, she's a minor, so they had to send her back. Throughout all of this, she never said anything to authorities or nothing about why she was continuing to run away. So, you know, no one knew of all of the horrible things that were happening to her at the hands of her own father. So they would just keep sending her back. And every time that Elizabeth would run away, Joseph would tell people that she was running away to join a cult, I guess so that he wouldn't be suspected of foul play. But he would tell everybody that she was running away to join a cult, and then she would just like end up coming back because she was, you know, captured by police or whatever. So after the last time Elizabeth ran away, Joseph decided to come up with a plan to make sure that it would never happen again. And I know, you know, most sane people would think, hey, my daughter keeps running away. Let me try to be a decent father. We talk about nasty ass Joseph Fritzl, so that was definitely not the case. On August 24th of 1984, Joseph was building an underground structure. That's what we'll call it for now. He was building an underground structure in the backyard. And he asked Elizabeth if she could come and help him to install a door. So he asked her to like just kind of hold it in place so he could apply like the screws and everything. And after the door was up and secured, he covered her face with an ether-soaked towel and threw her into the cellar and closed the door. And that is where Elizabeth will remain for the next 24 years. And I know what y'all thinking. How did she go missing for 24 years? I'm about to tell you. So when Elizabeth's mom noticed that she was missing one of her children, she decided to file like a missing persons report because, you know, she was 18 at this point. So she was like, holy shit, if she run away this time, she could really be gone for good. So, you know, she's getting worried and everything because she had 5 sons, but she only had 2 daughters. So I'm not sure what order of children Elizabeth was. When the police would come by the house to like kind of investigate Elizabeth's disappearance, Joseph would tell the police the story that he always would tell, that Elizabeth ran away to be in a cult. And you know, Elizabeth's mom is still worried because she's like, you know, my daughter's out there, she's missing, she's probably run away for good, we'll probably never see her again. And the police are just like, well, she is 18, so, you know, if she don't want to live here no more, she don't have to. But little did they know that while they were having this conversation, Elizabeth was 20 feet underneath them, completely unaware of what was going on. So for the first year that Elizabeth was held captive, she was chained to a metal post that was on her bed. And she was chained by her arms in the beginning for like the first week. And then after a couple days, she ended up being chained around her waist. But after being chained up for a year, Joseph's nasty ass decided that having the chains on her was getting in the way of him having some sexy time with his daughter. So he took the chains off and allowed her to just, you know, roam around the compound freely, as if she had a way to escape anyway. So let me just tell y'all about this messed up chamber real quick. So the chamber that Elizabeth was locked in was about 380 square feet. So it was very tiny. It was very tiny. She had a bathroom in there. She had, it was 2 bedrooms if I'm not mistaken. So it was 2 bedrooms down there. Actually, no, it was 1 bedroom. It was 1 bedroom. It was 1 bathroom. She had like a little common area, I guess you could call it. But when you think about like everything that was in there, and she had like a small kitchen, like a sink and everything. But when you think about everything that was in there, that's a small area to be in. Like, I could not imagine being in, like, y'all know how small studio apartments are? And studio apartments are usually about maybe not even 600 square feet. So like half of a studio apartment is what she was living in. And she was also like very she was very concealed. And when I say very concealed, I mean even if somebody were to go down there, they would never get to her. And the reason why is because you had to go through 7 doors once you got into the cellar. You had to go through 7 doors before you got to the 8th door. And when you got to the 8th door, the only person that could get in there was Joseph. Joseph banned everyone in the family from going to that compound, which most of the children had moved out because they had gotten older. But he especially told his wife that she was not allowed in the compound whatsoever. She was not allowed down there, even to bring him a cup of coffee. So he told her that that was his like workstation area. And the reason that he was able to build the compound in the first place, first of all, he kidnapped her in 1984. He had been building this cellar since 1977 when he first started. I feel like this was premeditated. He first started sexually assaulting Elizabeth in 1977, and then that is when he got the permits and everything to be able to build the compound. And the reason why he was able to get the permits is because the Soviet Union actually thought that it was a good idea for the citizens of their multiple countries to build like bunkers and everything underneath their homes, just in case, you know, because this was during the Cold War. So the Soviet Union was like, yeah, it's probably a good idea for y'all to, you know, have some bunkers and stuff, because war is happening and y'all know how the Americans get down. So we just gonna protect ourselves. If you can build a shelter, go ahead and do it. And of course, Joseph had the money to do it. So he hired contractors and everything, and he built that dungeon over the next 7 years. So following Rosemary filing the police report regarding Elizabeth's disappearance, Joseph actually forced Elizabeth to write a letter to her mother telling her that she had run away with a friend, and that if she didn't stop the search and if they came looking for her, then she would leave the entire country of Austria and they would never see her again. So Rosemary, unfortunately, was just like, well, my daughter's ran away. It's nothing I can do about it. She is 18, so it is what it is. So she called off the search for her daughter and she just let it go. And after Joseph would force her to write the letters, he would drive like 90 miles to another city so that when he sent the letter off, it would be postmarked in another area. Like, he would literally get in his car and drive an hour away to mail the letter to the mom to cover up his nastiness. As gross as this is, that man was committed. That's some commitment. But it's still nasty because that's your child. On August 30th of 1988, just over 4 years after Elizabeth was initially held captive, she gave birth to her first daughter, Kirsten. You heard me. She gave birth to her first daughter, Kirsten. February 1st, 1990, she gave birth to her second child, Stefan. August 29th of 1992, she gave birth to her third child, Lisa. Now, it's Elizabeth and her now 3 kids living in this 380 square foot dungeon. And they running out of space. So, because they were running out of space, Joseph had the bright idea to take Lisa upstairs and plant her outside and then discover her with a note attached from Elizabeth saying that this was her daughter and she was no longer able to take care of her. So she decided to send her home to her parents to take care of her. Child Protective Services actually came out and like did their, you know, routine investigation whenever you are adopting a child, just to like make sure that the family is fit. And after they determined that everything was okay, they gave Elizabeth's parents legal custody of their Rosemary's granddaughter and Joseph's daughter slash granddaughter. That's a sick man. That is a sick man. February 26th, 1994, Elizabeth gives birth to her fourth child, Monica. And Monica would join her sister Lisa upstairs, following this exact same pattern. Oh, this is my second daughter. I'm unable to take care of her, so I decided to send her to be with her sister and you guys. Okay, so because of all the names, I know I kind of threw a lot at y'all really quickly, so let's just recap. So the oldest is Kirsten. Then you have Stefan, and they ended up using the term the downstairs children. Then Lisa is born and moved upstairs. Then shortly after, Monica is born and also moved upstairs. So she has 2 kids downstairs, 2 kids upstairs. I hope we're able to keep up from here, because I know it's a lot going on right now. On May 28th of 1996, you guessed it, Elizabeth gave birth again. But this time she gave birth to twin boys, Michael and Alexander. But unfortunately, Michael didn't make it. He died due to, if I'm not mistaken, like breathing complications. He had like, it could have been a side effect of the fact that it was an incestuous child. A child created, oh Lord. Usually when people have twins, they give birth earlier than the 40-week mark, because the longer you decide to wait to have your babies, the more detrimental it can be to your health. So it could be that his lungs were underdeveloped as a result of him being a twin, possibly, and you know, he was probably just weaker than Alexander. Or it could also be because he was not supposed to be created by his mother and now their father. But I mean, I'm not sure, but he did die due to breathing complications, and he died in Elizabeth's arms after being on this earth for approximately 66 hours. When he passed, Joseph took the child's body and threw him in an incinerator, and he had an incinerator in the dungeon. So he threw his body in the incinerator and he cremated him. So following Michael dying and being cremated and everything, Alexander was also sent upstairs to be with the other children. So now Kirsten and Stefan are still downstairs, and well, underground basically, and Lisa, Monica, and Alexander are all upstairs, with given the same story about how Elizabeth had the children and she wasn't able to care for them. And y'all know by now, y'all know what Joseph nasty ass made her, right? December 16th, 2002. I know y'all getting tired of this, but Elizabeth gave birth to her 7th child, Felix. Joseph wasn't able to just be taking all of these children upstairs, because he was taking them upstairs, but because he was spending so much time being preoccupied with his other family, his wife really was raising the kids on her own, because Joseph was really never in the house. It was, side note, one of Joseph's sisters, she actually said that Joseph would go to the cellar. He would lie to everybody saying that he was going down to the cellar to work on, because you know he was an electrical engineer. So he at this point in his life, he was working for like he was doing like freelance work. So he was working for like he was creating like machines and stuff, and he would just like sell them to certain manufacturers and everything. And that's basically how he made his living after he retired from the steel company. So because he had like electrical engineering experience and experience working with steel, He basically just told them that they couldn't come into the underground dungeon because of the danger that they could face because of all the steel and electricity around, and it was a hazardous area, so they were forbidden to go down there. And Joseph would go down there every morning at 9 a.m. and sometimes he would spend the night down there, and his wife would just assume that whenever he would spend the night down there, he just had like a big project coming up. And girl, she is bogus, but she believed it. She just thought he was down there working on his little machines and everything to sell to people so that she can keep living her little lavish lifestyle with her 3 grandkids that she don't even know is her little stepkids too. So he would go down to the cellar every morning at 9 a.m. Sometimes he would stay all night, sometimes he would come back, and sometimes he would not go down there at all. And he would not go down there at all to punish Elizabeth and the kids. And sometimes he would like, he would go down there once a week and bring down like a week's worth of food for them to live off of. And they had like a refrigerator, but the refrigerator would always like start leaking. And I mean, they already underground, so the conditions are horrible. So they're underground, and you have Elizabeth talked about seeing mice down there, and because it's such a small area, like, she would have to catch the mice by hand and kill them so that they wouldn't bite her and her children, and it's just so awful. She also said that in the summer, like, it would get very, very humid down there to the point where like the walls would start like sweating. And she basically described the feeling of being trapped down there during the summers as like being in a sauna. Once a week he would come down there. He would bring them like, you know, enough food to last them the week. But sometimes the food would go bad because their refrigerator was like, it was like a little mini fridge, but it was janky as hell. So like the refrigerator would like, it was like one of those fridges that have like the little freezer, you know, a mini fridge. You got like the little freezer compartment at the top. Well, that part would like start leaking, like it wouldn't be freezing properly, and it would start leaking, so their food would start spoiling. So when Joseph would come down, she would like complain about the mini fridge because it kept leaking and it was ruining their food. So Joseph would call her ungrateful, and he would go back upstairs, and he had like a generator and everything down there, you know, to keep the lights running. So he would go upstairs, and out of anger, he would shut off the generator, and sometimes he would leave the generator off, and they would be in the dark downstairs terrified for 3 days. So he would just leave them down there, and then when he figured Elizabeth came to her senses, he would go back down. Well, he would turn the lights and stuff on. He would go back down and everything and try to, I don't know what he would try to do, but he would fix it. 3 children and 1 adult that are sharing a 380 square foot compound. And they started to complain about like running out of space, because, you know, the kids were growing and everything, and they did not have any space to do anything. Like, they couldn't play, they couldn't breathe, they couldn't turn around, they couldn't do nothing because they were all up on each other. So Joseph came up with the idea that he would expand the cellar, but he would not expand the cellar himself. Oh, no, no, no. No, no. So Elizabeth and her children were given permission to expand the cellar themselves. So they would take their bare hands, spoons, and whatever else they could find, and they would chip away at the walls of the cellar. And after years, I mean years, of finally clawing away at the walls to get enough space, they were able to convert the studio, well, I don't want to say studio, They were able to convert the compound from 380 square feet to 590 square feet. And after the space was expanded, Joseph decided to just go ahead and like turn the extra space that they created, I guess you could say, into like an extra bedroom. And I know what y'all thinking, why didn't they just escape? Well, nasty ass Joseph decided to tell all of them tampered with the door that was keeping them trapped. It would send an electric shock throughout their bodies, and it was enough electricity to kill them. And he said that the remaining people in the room, that like if one person tried to break the door open or like pry the door open, then they would be electrocuted to death, and the remaining members would also die, but they would die because he had like the something rigged. I don't know, this is just what he said. He said that it was rigged so that as soon as the door electrocuted the person that was trying to escape, a gas would also like leak out. I don't know from where, because I'm assuming they didn't have vents down there, but he said a gas would leak out and kill everybody else that was still in the room. So out of fear, they just decided to not even try to tamper with the door, which I would have had to take my chances. I would have had to take my chances. I'm sorry. I'm not gonna be sitting up in no cellar for the rest of my life. Hell no. Electrocute me. Like, we would have came up with a plan. Like, who getting electrocuted and who would rather die from gas? If we got to play rock, paper, scissors to see who touching that dough, we just gonna have to do it. We all gonna die anyway. Just pick a way and let's go. Social services would continue to make regular visits to the Fritzl home to like just kind of check up on the welfare of the children, and they seemed to be, you know, in pretty good care. They were well fed, they were well taken care of, so they were just like, okay, we're just doing our routine check, everything seems fine here, bye. And they just left it all alone, not even thinking. And they believed Joseph's story about Elizabeth running away to be in a cult, and they didn't question anything. They didn't question her disappearance, they didn't question her whereabouts, they didn't question why these mysterious children just so happened to show up at their doorstep. They didn't know anything. And just to like kind of keep suspicions down, Joseph would force Elizabeth to write letters regularly, and then he would drive an hour away and postmark it in another city and mail it to the home, just to kind of like not have Rosemary stressing and wondering like the fate of her daughter, just to like give her some reassurance that she was still alive. He got Elizabeth to like call Rosemary to just like, you know, kind of check in with her real quick, let her know that like, you know, she was doing fine, everything was okay, asking how the kids were doing, just like everything like that. And the call would be over, and Rosemary kind of began to grow a little suspicious because the family had recently changed their home number, and she was wondering how in the hell Elizabeth got the new home number. But she didn't think enough to like press the issue. It was just a thought that she had because like, hello, they changed their home number. How did she get the home number and she hasn't been here in, it's like almost 10 years at this point. So they've changed the number, and all of a sudden she just randomly calls out of the blue one day, and she don't think to put two and two together whatsoever. So during the time that Elizabeth was down there, her and Joseph ain't just, you would think after having 7 kids he would have tried to like stop hunching on his daughter, and you would be sadly mistaken, because baby, the sex did not stop. The sex did not stop at all. Matter of fact, the sex got worse, because Joseph would force Elizabeth to watch like very strange and violent pornographic films, and then he would force her to reenact some of the scenes with him in front of the children. Really just to humiliate her. Like, y'all got 2 rooms. Why are you forcing the kids to watch this stuff? Like, he was just a sick fuck. So we're just gonna jump a little bit ahead to April 19th of 2008. During this time, Kirsten is 19 years old, and she just out of nowhere collapses, and no one knows like what's going on. No one knows what's wrong. Like, she just out of nowhere just collapses. So of course Elizabeth is worried. Like, she's like, holy shit, my daughter just collapsed. Like, what do I do? And she was in a coma. Like, she was not coming out of it. So she begged and pleaded with Joseph for him to take Kirsten to the hospital, and he agreed. He was like, okay, fine, you know, I'll take her to the hospital and see what's wrong with her, get her fixed up, and then bring her ass back down here. However, he asked Elizabeth to help him to like carry Kirsten upstairs, because again, she's 19, so it's probably a 2-person job. So he asked Elizabeth to help her to carry Kirsten upstairs, and that would be the first time Elizabeth would see outside in 24 years. Now mind you, she first went into the dungeon in 1984, and this is 2008. She has missed a lot. So during the time that she was incarcerated, cell phones came out. MySpace was started. Facebook was also started. If I'm not mistaken, Twitter was started. So social media was a thing. The Berlin Wall fell. So it's like she, in 24 years, she basically was coming out to a world that she had no idea was going on. And neither did the children. Like, they had never ever been outside before. They had never seen sunlight. They had never seen grass. And I mean, Elizabeth would like, this sounds so sad, but she would like draw pictures for the children of her memory of what outside looked like, so that they could have some type of sense of normal, like make the best out of a bad situation. So even though she only had like a high school education, she still managed to like teach the kids how to read and write. She taught them, like, she did the best that she could with the, given the circumstances that she was in. Like, she still tried to teach them. She made sure that they, you know, had the same education that she had. Like, she did what she could. She did. Following carrying Kirsten upstairs to he called an ambulance, and the ambulance came and, you know, picked Kirsten up. And of course this raised suspicion, because who is this strange child? Oh, not to mention, after he brought Kirsten back upstairs, well, after he brought Kirsten upstairs, he forced Elizabeth back down into the dungeon and locked her back up. So Kirsten gets to the hospital, and everybody's like, who is this? Like, because she's never ever seen sunlight. So she's very, very pale. She is very thin because of the, you know, lack of eating that she's been doing. And when they checked her teeth, she's never been to the dentist. She's never been to the dentist. So her teeth were like horribly rotten. Horribly rotten. Like, they were not, you could tell that the children had not received any medical attention at all. And even during Elizabeth giving birth to all of her children, Joseph helped her to give birth. She did not go to a hospital. She did not go to a doctor. Sis ain't get no epidural. Like, she had 7 natural, well, she gave birth to twins, so they don't come out at the same time. So she gave birth to 7 children with no care. And when it was time to cut the umbilical cord, Joseph cut the umbilical cord with a pair of scissors. When she was in the hospital and they started to notice everything that was going on, people started to get suspicious because Kirsten is 4 years older than Lisa. So if Kirsten is being brought to the hospital and she's 19 and Lisa is only 15, you know, people started having questions, because if Kirsten is the firstborn, why did Elizabeth keep one child and then send the rest away? Why didn't she send all of them? If she was able to care for Kirsten, why wasn't she able to care for all of them? Like, they were all just asking questions that needed to be answered. So Joseph ended up showing up with Kirsten at the hospital, and they asked her like what was going on, and he was like, this is my granddaughter, this is, you know, Elizabeth's daughter, and she just collapsed and she just needs some medical care. So they're like, okay, we need Elizabeth to show up because we've been looking for her for 24 years. So sis need to come out. They had they posted like a public service announcement asking for Elizabeth to come forward and claim her child, because they were not buying Joseph's story at all. And they needed the proof that Elizabeth was alive and well, that they haven't seen her in 24 years. Like, her case went cold and then the case was closed. So they're like, nah, you got some explaining to do. So they issued this notice as if Elizabeth was gonna see it, because baby girl was 20 feet underground and nobody knew. And she didn't have access to like news and cable and all that stuff. So she was definitely she was not gonna be able to show up. After about a week of Kirsten being in the hospital, yeah, Joseph was stalling because he was trying to get his story together. In my personal opinion, I feel like if Kirsten didn't fall ill, they would have never saw the outside of that dungeon. And I can't help but wonder, like, what would have happened if Joseph had died in a car accident? What would have happened if Joseph had suffered from a massive heart attack? What would have happened if he fell into a coma and he wasn't able to, like, you know, bring food down there for them and stuff like that? Like, they all would have died. And that's just that's so weird to think about. Like, what was your backup plan? After about a week of Elizabeth begging to go and see her child and everything, Joseph was just like, well, they're already asking, so, you know, come on. Elizabeth goes to the hospital per the public's request, and she walks in, and of course she resembles Kirsten a lot physically, because they're both extremely pale and they are both like very, very thin, and they both, you know, have the same, pretty much it's like the same person walked in, just older. Like, Elizabeth hadn't been to the dentist in over 20 years. She hadn't received any type of medical attention. Like, sis was not in good shape. So the doctor's name was Albert Reiter, one of those names, but the Dr. Albert, that's what we're gonna call him. So Dr. Albert, after seeing Elizabeth, he ended up tipping off police because something just, you know, he went to medical school, he got that degree, so he know when some shit don't make sense. So he spoke to Elizabeth about, you know, Kirsten's condition and everything. She was in a coma because she was suffering from kidney failure. So she was in a coma, and they were, you know, waiting for her to show progress. And after he spoke with her about Kirsten's condition, he went and he phoned the police and like kind of gave them a tip. And he was like, hey, Elizabeth Fritzl's here, and I think y'all need to come and see what's going on because something not making sense. So the police do show up, and they end up apprehending both Elizabeth and Joseph, and they bring them down to the police station. Of course, they put them into separate interrogation rooms, and they start going in on Elizabeth. Because the first thing they want to know is, where the hell have you been for the past 20 years? Well, for the past 24 years. And she absolutely refused to cooperate with the investigation. And the police are like, look, we need you to tell us like where you've been all these years. And Elizabeth said that she would only tell them everything if they promised that she would never ever have to see her father again. So after she said that, the police knew that this was serious. And they promised her that she would never have to see her father again if she told them what happened. And Elizabeth ran down the past 24 years of her life in about 2 hours. Shortly after midnight, Joseph's nasty ass was arrested. And he was charged with incest, coercion, rape, false imprisonment, enslavement, negligent homicide. Those were all of his charges. This is where the shit gets to the point where it pisses me off. After Joseph is arrested, Rosemarie completely leaves the house. Completely. She leaves the house and she does not look back, because she cannot believe that for 24 years her daughter has been living literally 20 feet under her. Very much so shocked and appalled. And I don't blame her, because Joseph, what the hell? So she had been lied to this entire time about the whereabouts of her daughter. And because Elizabeth has not seen her mother in 24 years, she ain't trying to talk to her. She ain't trying to talk to her mama at all. Matter of fact, she want her mama as far away from her as possible. So she distanced herself from her mom, mostly because she said that her mom didn't fight hard enough to find her, which I definitely agree with, because your daughter's missing and you didn't think that her being missing for 24 years and never showing up back at home wasn't suspicious, even just to visit, to see her children, nothing like that. Like, you didn't think to do any of that. No, not buying it. So Rosemarie denies knowing anything about what was going on. And I mean, people of course suspected her, because not only is she Joseph's wife, but they were living in the same house. And as soon as she found out what happened, she literally left the house and didn't return. So she attempted to clear her name, saying that she had no idea what was going on. And Joseph corroborated her story. He said that he was acting alone. She didn't know anything. You know, she's not the problem, I am. So come after me. This is when the court proceedings start. So Joseph's nasty ass and his nasty ass lawyer. Of course, Joseph pleaded not guilty. Of course he did. He pleaded not guilty. Is it pleaded? Pled. He pled not guilty. Is it pleaded? Girl, I don't know. He said he wasn't guilty. Joseph was Satan. The attorney was Satan Jr. Because this man, oh my God. He said he wasn't guilty of false imprisonment. He wasn't guilty of enslavement. And he wasn't guilty of rape. But he said that the only thing that they could really charge him with is negligent homicide for the death of Michael and incest. Baby, if you can prove the incest, you can prove literally everything else. That man is bogus. He's a bozo. The prosecution was like, we got something for y'all ass. So the prosecution calls Elizabeth to the stand. And this was the first time that Elizabeth would see her father in like 6 months. And on the day that she was called into court to testify and she walked in without the disguise, Joseph burst out in tears. He burst out in tears. He just instantly started crying. And Joseph, after listening to like all of the trauma that he caused her, he decided to change his plea of not guilty to guilty. He was sentenced to life in prison at the very tender age of 73. I mean, honestly, I don't feel like that's good enough. Joseph was evaluated by a forensic psychologist, and he was said to have a sexual disorder, but he also had multiple personality disorder. One of those being borderline personality disorder, and also schizoid personality disorder. As of September of 2021, they pretty much determined that he was no longer a threat to society, and pending the results of his various like mental health evaluations, if they see progress in him, it is very possible that he could be paroled. Which, I mean, he is old, but like, you need to pay for your crimes. Elizabeth, she changed her name, and it was kind of like the witness protection program somewhat. So after she changed her name, I think the kids changed their names as well. I think it was just like a whole thing. And they went ahead and found her a nice little cottage and a place that is only known as Village X to protect her privacy. And she still does not want, she doesn't even leave her house. Like, she doesn't want any attention. She doesn't want anyone to bring up all of the trauma that she went through. She doesn't want to relive it, and I don't blame her. I wouldn't want to go through that shit either. There were several books written about this case. There was also a Netflix film that was inspired by the case of Elizabeth Fritzl. The name of the movie, some of you may have seen it, it's called Room. I don't know if it's still on Netflix while I'm telling y'all to go watch this movie, but it was actually pretty good. I like it. Picasso. Needless to say, he is serving the rest of his time behind, hopefully he spent the rest of his life behind bars. I don't care if he's no longer a danger to society. Neither is the Golden State Killer. I hope that Elizabeth and her children were able to work through their trauma and everything, because that's just awful. But I hope this case wasn't too much for you guys. The only thing that I can say is, watch who you have kids with. Not even just watch who you have kids with, watch who you marry, because I am pretty sure that the signs were always there for little Joseph. So thank you guys again for watching. Do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in next week's true crime video.